The old fart in the title is, of course, yours truly. Even as a golf professional, teaching golf every day doesn't make you a better player, and sometimes when I watch the videos of my swing back, I get nightmares. One of the main things that I find as I'm getting older, which is every day in every way, is that my hip rotation is reducing daily. It was never really very good. I was one of those young kind of reverse C golfers in my youth, so I've been far better at getting an earlier extension to get any kind of real kind of hip rotation in my golf swing. And now being a grumpy old man, I can tell you about that as well. The question is, of course, should we just give up, sell the clubs, invest in a lot of good whiskey and fester at home, or is it maybe not too late to actually give up on the game? Now, I'm 61 years of age, which probably for some of you watching won't be too bad, but for a lot of you it's like basically he's over the hill and far away. What's he bothered about? He can still hit a golf ball. Yes, but you're never really happy, are you? And the core movement in a golf swing is really the hip rotation, and as soon as that starts to reduce, it starts to affect every part of your game. You're no longer able to get enough pressure on the golf club. It's difficult to get lean in the swing and de-loft the club into impact, and so on and so forth. So the big question for me today is really, is it possible to change that? Now, I know it's not going to happen in a day, it's going to have to be drilled, but if I can find the right drills and find the right reason why I'm not turning enough, then maybe we'll have a chance to actually solve the problem. Well, the very first thing is to understand that it can only really come from two sources, the reason you're not turning. Either the programming isn't correct, you're not trying to turn, or you're not turning correctly, or you're physiologically not capable of it. So the very first thing you want to do is try and find out which of these is it. And the most likely source is going to come, you're just too stiff, old, knackered really to do it, and you're better off playing chess. But if we were to take a mirror and then stand in front of the mirror and go into the impact position that we want with the hip rotated to the target and the arms outstretched, that means the right arm applying pressure towards the ground down the shaft, the left arm being pulled up by this rotation in the lead shoulder up the shaft. What's that look like? And what I'm really looking for in the mirror here is actually to see both arse cheeks. If I'm here and this is where I usually am, or going in this direction, then this is obviously going to limit what I can actually do with my shoulder rotation, limit where my hands are in the golf swing, and it's easy to get a bit flippy. And if you're starting missing them right and left through no fault of your own, then it might well be this. Once you actually get into that position, I would imagine that your body is probably telling you why you haven't been getting into this position. First of all, you can actually see that if I don't lift the trail heel, then I'm not getting much rotation at all. I've probably turned about 20 degrees. So if that is my tendency, then I'm going to have to try and get that heel off the ground in order to do it. And when I do that, I can then see, well, I'm getting a couple of arse cheeks in the mirror, and I'm pointing with my tummy button probably around about kind of 45-50 degrees to the target. Nowhere near Rory or one of these young guys, but I suppose these are just simply boundaries I have to accept. So yeah, I'll have to accept them, won't I? And that basically means that when I'm in this position, I want to at least use the mobility that I have at my disposal. If you are actually finding this is a very uncomfortable position, then then you really want to kind of decide what is uncomfortable about it. Is it muscles and ligaments and bands which are actually just saying, oh no, don't do that? Or is it joints? If it's joints, stop, forget it, accept you can't do it, and do something else, or just simply kind of reduce your expectations because it's getting to a point where really physiologically you can't do it. If, however, it's really more a feeling of tightness, a muscle not allowing you to do it at the moment, a ligament getting pulled out or stretched, then maybe just doing this kind of drill on a daily basis, trying to get into that impact position, even without a golf club, this kind of feeling as if you were pulling two sides of a rope which is going through a hook there. I think we said this before, a wheel rather at the bottom. Getting into this kind of position is where you want to try and get to, and you've got to be able to get there without too many aches and pains before, during or afterwards. If you are actually able to do that, then there is a chance of you actually getting this amount of rotation into your golf swing, but only if the programming is right. And a lot of people are believing they are turning their hips and they're not. And the reason that they're not doing it is either because they are not working with their legs and their hips when they're swinging the golf club, because they're too worried about hitting the golf ball, or on the other hand, that they just simply haven't really practiced moving their hips. You're not going to be able to move your hips just by moving your hips. You have to use your legs. And that means that your lead leg is going to have to straighten. Your trail leg, which was probably a bit straight in the backswing, is going to have to bend, push and twist, and get your trail hip forward as well. So it's not a question of them both basically just supporting your weight. On the contrary, they've got to be moving. Now, I know when you get the feeling of doing a lot with your hips, you get very worried about staying centered and being able to control your swing, but you have to move your legs. And the older you get, the more you have to use your legs, even to the extent where the lead heel's coming off the ground in the backswing, the trail heel absolutely must come off the ground in the downswing. You've got to be pushing off the trail leg, you've got to be pushing back with the lead leg. And again, we come back to this kind of rope drill. If you can get that kind of feeling going, you can see that I'm staying totally centered when I do it. When you actually try to do this with a golf club, you've got to be careful, because once you actually start moving your hips violently towards a target, there is a great chance of your not being able to coordinate that with what your arms and the club are supposed to be doing in the downswing, and this is going to cause you to come from out to in. Firstly, because your shoulders start to follow your hip rotation on a rotating too flatly. The answer to that is, again, getting this feeling of the rope in your hand, and you can see the trail shoulder going down in the direction of the shaft, and the lead shoulder pulling up and back in the same plane as the shaft. That is actually helping me to get the arms down to the ball. But the arms and hands have got to do something as well. You are applying massive amounts of rotational force here by doing this movement with your legs and your hips, and that is of course going to have an influence not only on your shoulder rotation but also on your arms and hands. And if your arms and hands are still at the top of your backswing and the first thing you start to do is to rotate, then you are, by the time you start to drop your arms and hands, you're cutting across the golf ball, you're coming from out to in, you're getting a slice, and obviously you've got lots of hip rotation, but you can't find your bloody golf ball. How are you going to find your golf ball? Well, you've got to be applying the same path and face angle that we've been talking about in every video that any decent instructor's ever done and you've ever heard. And that basically means that you've got to get the arms down. And you're pulling the arms down, pushing the club down, and turning at the same time. Strangely enough, if you start to practice this on just short swings, you should actually get the feeling for it. As if you get your hips turning a bit quick, you'll feel the club going out and away from you. If you get your hands coming down quicker than you're turning your hips, then you'll find you're catching the ground too early because your lead shoulder hasn't actually gone up and away and pulled the club away from the ground. So there's plenty of feedback for you to be having, and that's basically what you want. You want to kind of get this feeling of taking it back to around about tummy height, maybe even chest height, pressing down by pushing the club down and back behind you, going into a bit of flexion with your lead wrist and turning your hips as far as you can. The timing here is also important. You want to have the feeling of getting into a full rotation before you hit the ball. Now I've got the feeling of really pressing down with my trail hand, pulling forward and up with my lead hand, and turning my hips at the same time. If I'm honest, maybe the movement from my legs, getting my hips around, is a millisecond earlier. But it can't be any more than that, or I'm coming from the outside again. Again, the way that you're actually contacting the ground should give you feedback. If you're creating a nice straight line as you brush the ground, then that's pretty a good sign. If you're not hacking into the ground or topping it, it's not making any ground contact at all, another good sign. And once you actually get all these good signs, might be an idea to put a ball in the way of it. And then have a look at yourself and see if you can still see both of your arse cheeks. Now, if I put that back into slow motion, you probably won't be able to see as much of them as I would have liked in the first place. And this is, again, feel and real. I have the feeling I'm turning like a young 20-year-old, but in truth, my body isn't that. And it's just telling me I'm doing it just to keep me happy. So I'm going to have to do a lot of repetition with at least some kind of feedback, if not every swing. You want to have a camera setup which gives you a little bit of feedback, maybe every 10, 15, 20 swings, to see, are you getting more rotation? Because I promise you, your body is going to be taking the piss. It's not going to be saying, yeah, you're very good. It's going to say, that was perfect, and you look in the video and it wasn't. Another thing to look out for, and you'll probably be able to see it in the video, is you might stand up on it. It's easier for your hips to rotate if you come out of your spine angle and obviously go into a little bit of early extension. When you're starting your downswing, you want the feeling of almost kind of sitting a bit, pushing this lead hip back, pushing the lead hip forward and staying over the golf ball. That way you can get more pressure on the golf ball, but it applies more pressure to your body to actually get your hips out of the way in time. This is basically what you've got to do, and it's not going to happen overnight. So if you really want to be a miserable old fart who can also turn their hips, you're going to have to invest some time and some effort into this, because nobody gets a free ride into this game. If you're not prepared to do that, like I say, buy a chessboard or get yourself a dog and go for a walk with him, because golf is probably not your game. If you are a masochist like myself, then maybe golf is your game and you're not prepared to accept that your body isn't going to do what you want it to do, then it means you've got a lot of work in front of you, and I'm going to help you to do it. I'll be back very shortly with another old fart video. See you next time. Goodbye.